cry born from hunger but carried on the breath of hope. The land, poor and abandoned by landlords, seemed cursed at first glance. No crops grew, no master claimed it, and yet, hidden in the folds of wilderness, it waited, untouched, like a secret gift from God. Streams shimmered with fish, forests guarded their deer. The heather paths wound into silence. Where others saw desolation, Granny saw promise, her old eyes glinting with a light that refused to fade. "What have we got to lose?" she asked, her voice trembling yet resolute. And so we left one May morning, carrying nothing but 2 bundles, a few coins sewn into Ma's hem, and scraps of food, dried seaweed, acorn flour, a little Indian meal. It wasn't enough to live on, but it was enough to keep us moving. Around us, the roads were crowded with the broken and the starving evicted families stumbling like shadows of themselves. Some walked toward the ports, hoping for ships across the sea, others toward workhouses, their last surrender, and some, like us, walked with no destination but faith. We passed a family by a stone wall, the children too weak to rise. Ma's eyes filled, her hands reaching for our small bag of food. But Da's voice cut through. "We can't save everyone. We must save ourselves." His words were hard, but in them was the terrible arithmetic of survival. And so, with hunger pressing us forward, we followed Granny's memory. Not a map, but whispers of old tales, half-remembered stories of a hidden place where the land gave freely. The road became a track. The track faded into wild heather, until at last we lay beneath the ruins of a stone circle, huddled together for warmth. Stars glimmered above like forgotten prayers. By the second evening, Da began to mutter of foolish chases and wild geese, when suddenly, there it was, a valley, green and quiet, where cottages lay in ruins yet stood as if waiting. Trees leaned close, a stream sparkled through the middle, and wild apple blossoms drifted like snow. Granny whispered, "I told you." And though she smiled, even she looked astonished. "I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." That verse was written in the very shape of that valley. It was no accident, no chance. It was a miracle, a divine refuge hidden for those who refused to surrender. And as we stepped into it, hearts trembling, bellies aching, and souls clinging to hope, we knew this was more than survival. This was providence. This was the land itself answering our cry. A cry that echoes through time, carried by the wind, whispered by the sea, and written in the soil where both man and beast have knelt. Hungry and broken, it is the cry of survival, of human hands trembling beside empty bowls, and of wild gifts hidden in the earth, waiting to be remembered. My name is Sean O'Brien, and this is not only the story of my family's fight through Ireland's great hunger, but the story of how the bond between humanity and nature, the eternal animal and human connection, became our salvation. The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world, and all who live in it. And yet, in that spring of 1847, it felt as though the Lord had turned his face away from us, leaving us to wander the roads of County Cork for days, stomachs howling, watching neighbors collapse from hunger one by one. But before despair swallowed us whole, there was still memory. And memory carried us back to the old ways, to the food that lived in forest and field, bird and beast, sea and shore. This is where my tale begins, not in hunger, but in the warmth of a home that once knew laughter, potatoes steaming on the table, and the belief that such a bond with the land could never be broken. Humans are waiting. Prepare yourself for the wild to change your heart. Our cottage stood on the edge of Lord Ashford's estate. No more than 2 rooms of mud and stone, a thatch roof that leaked with every heavy rain. Yet to us, it was a kingdom, alive with the sound of Ma's voice, the crackle of the hearth, and the smell of potatoes boiled with garlic or mashed with buttermilk. My sister Bridget, 12 and wise beyond her years, often helped Ma, while little Tomas, no older than 5, played with pebbles in the dirt floor, his laughter echoing like music. Da, shoulders bent from long days working other men's fields, still found strength to carry me on his back after supper. In those moments I believed we were rich, but richness in Ireland then was fragile. Potatoes were our lifeblood, our bread, our hope. And when September 1846 arrived, the green leaves of our fields seemed tired, yellowing in ways Dodd dismissed as nothing to worry about. But when he sank his spade into the soil and lifted out the first harvest, the horror rose with it. Black, soft, rotten. The stench was sweet and foul, the smell of death itself. The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of our God endures forever. That night, for the first time, I saw my mother cry. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled as they clutched handfuls of ruined potatoes. Her tears fell into the dirt where our future should have grown. Even Da's voice broke when he whispered, "We'll manage." But his eyes were gray as ash, and in them I saw a truth too heavy for a boy's heart. What we didn't know then was that this moment, this shattering of faith in the soil, was only the beginning of a long season of hunger that would demand we turn not to what we had planted, but to what God had already placed in the wild around us. Hunger came like a shadow that swallowed days into endless nights. By November, we were down to one meal a day. Thin stirabout made from yellow Indian meal, bitter and harsh, stretching water into soup that filled nothing but silence. Tomas cried himself to sleep, small hands clutching his belly, whispering for food that didn't exist. Bridget's eyes grew sharp with hunger, her cheeks hollow, and Ma's face carried lines of sorrow that hadn't been there before. Then Granny Mere, Da's mother, arrived, 70 winters in her bones but eyes sharp as a hawk. She laughed at our despair, called us fools for starving while food lay all around. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn. Yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. That verse lived in her heart, and she carried it like a torch against the darkness. The next morning she led us into the fields, teaching us to see what we had forgotten. Rose hips gleamed like drops of blood against thorny branches. Tart, sweet, life itself. Nettles that stung the skin became rich green soup when boiled. Hazelnuts hidden in grass fed us like treasure. Even crab apples, sour enough to twist your face, softened into food with heat. That night, when Ma boiled nettles and wild garlic into thin broth, I tasted something strange. Not just survival, but hope. Each spoonful was bitter, yet alive. In that moment, nature itself reached out like an old friend, reminding us of a bond long ignored. What we had thought was death around us was, in truth, life. Wild, hidden, waiting to be claimed again. This isn't just survival. It's a miracle born of sea and soil. Days later, Granny led us to the shore. A 5-mile walk through roads littered with broken families, hollow-eyed children, mothers shielding little ones from the sight of death. But when we reached the ocean, gray waves crashing against stone, something inside me lifted. "The sea has been feeding since the world began," Granny said, her voice rising over the roar of the tide. And she was right. Limpets clung stubbornly to rocks. Periwinkles hid in cracks. Mussels nestled low on stones, their shells glistening like jewels. For the first time, I saw the shore not as play, but as providence. We gathered until our aprons sagged heavy with shellfish, seaweed, and clams that shot from the sand as if leaping into our hands. Around us, other families gathered too. Strangers bound together in this dramatic wildlife rescue. This human and animal connection orchestrated by the sea itself. Nobody fought, nobody hoarded. Hunger had stripped us of pride, but the ocean gave freely. And in its rhythm we found fellowship. You open your hand and satisfy the desires of every living thing. Psalm 145:16. That night, the fire steamed with mussels. Limpets boiled into salty broth. Seaweed crisped over flame. For the first time in months, our bellies were full. For the first time since the blight, laughter cracked through silence. And in that fragile joy, I understood. Survival was not just about food, but about remembering that the wild still loved us. And if we listened, it would keep calling. And so, through forest, field, and sea, we lived. The hunger did not end quickly. Neighbors perished. Families fled to faraway shores. And sorrow painted Ireland in shadows. But we, the O'Briens, survived. Not because of what we planted, but because of what we remembered. Because of a bond with the earth that is older than any crop. A bond that speaks not only of survival, but of love. Of the divine weaving humanity and nature into one. The Lord will provide. That truth carried us, and it carries me even now. When I think of those years, I don't remember only the hunger. I remember Granny's hands holding Ro's hips, Da's voice teaching me to pry limpets from stone, Ma's tears turning to smiles as broth bubbled in the pot, and Tomas laughing again with a belly full of seaweed and mussels. This is the miracle. We were not abandoned. The wild had been waiting, and when we answered its call, it gave us life. And that is why I tell you this. Because in every famine, every loss, every broken season, nature still sings the same promise. You are not alone. Life will find you again. On the way home from the sea, our aprons bulging with limpets, mussels, periwinkles, and strands of seaweed glistening with salt water, the air around us felt alive with possibility. For the first time in months, hope was heavier than hunger in our pockets. But then we met the Clearys from the next townland over, 6 of them, walking slow, hollow-eyed, like shadows of the people they once were. Mrs. Cleary had baby Joseph wrapped tightly in her shawl, his tiny face barely visible. The older children stumbled along behind, thin as twigs, their eyes too big for their heads. Granny stopped them, her stick firm in the mud. "There's food at the shore," she said. Shellfish, seaweed. It's not much, but it's something." But Mr. Cleary shook his head, his voice a cracked whisper. "We're for the workhouse. They say there's soup twice a day and a roof over your head." Granny's eyes flashed sharp as lightning. "And fever in every corner," she said. "You'd do better to trust the sea than those walls of death." But the Clearys kept walking, heads bent against the wind. We watched them go, our hearts heavy as stones. Later, word reached us that baby Joseph never made it to the workhouse. Fever claimed him before the gates. His mother followed him a week later, just as Granny had warned. "When you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." That night, Ma boiled the shellfish with nettles and wild garlic. The scent filled our cottage, rich and strange, as if the earth itself had sat down at our table. Even Da, who had doubted Granny's wild food from the start, ate his fill and asked for more. For the first time in months, I saw warmth in his eyes again. And Granny, her face lit by firelight, said only one thing. "Tomorrow, we try the bog. Humans are waiting." Prepare yourself for the wild to change your heart. The bog was another world. If the sea was vast and open, the bog was secret and still. Water dark as tea seeping between long tusks of grass. The ground squelching with every step. We had to tread carefully, for one wrong move could sink you knee-deep in mud. Granny leaned on her stick, her eyes scanning like a hawk's. "Bog beans," she said, pointing at a plant with white flowers. "Bitter roots, but they'll fill you." We found cranberries too, bright against the brown earth. Small and precious this late in the year. Granny showed us bog myrtle for flavor, reeds whose roots could be dried and ground into flour, and bilberries, what the English called froyens, clinging dry to their bushes but still good. Then her eyes twinkled with mischief, and if you're very lucky, you might even find bog butter. Bridget frowned. "A bog butter?" Granny nodded. In the old days, people buried butter deep in the bog to preserve it. Some never came back for it. Hundreds of years later, you can still find it. Strange, waxy, but good. We never found any ancient butter that day, but the thought of it stirred something in me. Hidden treasures in the mud, waiting for hungry children to discover. It made the whole world seem full of secrets, like the land itself wanted to keep us alive. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land. And in that strange, secret place, I believed it. An animal is calling. Will you answer? Winter deepened, and death crept closer. The Kellys next door lost their youngest to fever. The O'Sullivans down the road sold everything and sailed for America. At Mass, Father Murphy read the names of the dead each Sunday, and the list stretched longer and longer. But we survived. Thin as scarecrows, ribs sharp as blades, but still breathing. Granny's knowledge carried us. Nettle soup, rose hips sweetened by frost, hazelnuts, crab apples, blackberries, shellfish, cranberries, even clover flowers and bracken shoots, and the inner bark of trees. Though Granny warned us never to take too much, or the tree would die with us. One gray January morning during a brief thaw, Granny led us into Lord Ashford's oak forest. Da grew nervous. The gamekeepers were merciless with poachers. But Granny shook her head. "We're not after his lordship's deer. Acorns," she said, pointing to the ground littered with brown nuts. Bitter as sin raw, but if you're patient, they'll feed you. We gathered baskets full, checked for wormholes, shelled them, and ground the nut meat between stones. Then came the soaking, days of washing the bitterness out until we had flour. Heavy, dense bread rose from that flour. Nothing like the soft wheaten bread of better years. But it filled our bellies and gave us strength. A man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Yet in those days, acorn bread tasted enough like salvation to keep us standing. This isn't just survival. It's a heartwarming animal story written by the land itself. Word spread. Families came to Granny, their faces thin and hollow, asking her to teach them. She did gladly, leading groups into the fields, showing them the weeds that could be food. At first, some balked. "We're not animals to grub in the dirt," they said. But hunger is a sharper teacher than pride. Soon, even the proudest bent low to gather what they once called weeds. Still, not all listened. Some trusted too much in the government's promises. Some were too weak to walk. Others had no access to bog or sea. And some simply gave up. In towns, people died in the streets. Nothing to forage but garbage. One February morning, snow blanketed the ground. My heart sank. Snow meant the end of foraging. But Granny only smiled. "Snow's not the end. You just need to look harder." We found rose hips sweeter after frost, acorns and hazelnuts hidden in snowdrifts, watercress green and peppery by streams that never froze. "Life wants to live," Granny said softly, brushing snow from a plant. "It finds a way even in the hardest times." Her words became truth carved into my bones. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And yet, even Granny's wisdom had its limits. By March, the wild foods thinned. Acorns were gone. Shellfish beds needed rest. Plants slept beneath frozen soil. Our ribs stuck out like rungs of ladders. Bridget's hair fell in clumps. Tomas grew too weak even to cry. That was when the Quakers arrived. Strangers who crossed seas not for profit but for compassion. They brought money, food, and soup kitchens. Huge iron pots in the market square steamed with thin broth of turnips, cabbage, a whisper of meat. But it was hot, free, and given without question. No demand to change our faith. No shame but the one hunger had already carved in us. Ma took my hand as we stood in line that first day. "There's no shame in taking bread freely given," she whispered. "This too is God's provision." And she was right. The combination of Quaker soup and wild food pulled us through that spring. Da found work fixing roads. Ma washed clothes when she could, and we children scoured hedgerows like hawks. By April, my eyes could spot watercress from 50 paces. Bracken shoots even under snow. That knowledge became my inheritance, written into me by hunger and by love. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. But then came the cruelest blow. Lord Ashford decided sheep were worth more than people. Evictions swept the land like fire. The bailiffs came with crowbars and torches, pulling down cottages, turning families into ghosts on the road. We watched the Murphys lose everything. Their home burning while Mrs. Murphy stood in the rain with her baby. Da's voice was quiet, grim. "We're next. His lordship won't keep a laborer who—" But Granny's eyes glimmered with something more than hope. A memory. Half-faded, yet fierce, handed down like scripture. And so, on that May morning, we walked We passed families collapsed beside stone walls, children too weak to lift their heads. Ma's trembling hand reached for the pouch of acorn flour, but Da's voice, heavy, breaking, stopped her. We can't save them all. We have to save ourselves. That truth burned, but we walked on. Roads turned to paths, paths to tracks, and tracks to nothing but heather. Hunger gnawed, cold nights pressed in, yet we clung to one another, huddled inside the ruins of a stone circle, as if the ancient spirits of Ireland themselves would shelter us. Then, on the second evening, just when Da's faith wavered, it appeared. A hidden valley, ivy-clad cottages stood like bones of a forgotten people. A stream shimmered silver through the center, and forests breathed green all around. It was like stepping into a fairy tale written by God's own hand. Granny only whispered, "Told you." But I saw the astonishment in her face, as if even she hadn't believed the land would keep its promise. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom like the rose. That night, for the first time, we dreamed not of hunger but of survival. We were not the first. Two families, the Ryans from Skibbereen and the Doyles from Bantry, had already claimed cottages, their faces wary as we arrived. But when their eyes fell on Granny, their suspicions softened. Even in famine, respect for the old ways endured. Mrs. Ryan pointed to the stream, alive with darting fish, small but plenty. Mr. Doyle nodded toward the forest. "If you move quiet, you'll find deer." Da and I chose a crumbling cottage near the forest's edge. Stones sagged, roof gone, but the walls still strong. Together, we patched cracks with mud, built a roof from branches and sod, while Ma and Bridge stuffed moss into every gap. Thomas toddled beside us, clutching pebbles, unaware that his laughter itself was a rebellion against despair. Granny roamed the valley with the vigor of a girl, returning each evening with treasures. Hazel groves, wild strawberries, cranberries shining in bog pools, mushrooms tucked under pine. She warned us solemnly, "Never eat what you don't know. Death wears an innocent face in the forest." By midsummer, life pulsed in us again. We feasted on fish caught in woven traps, rabbits snared with twisted grass, apples sour yet sweet, berries staining our fingers purple. Ma boiled wild cabbage and leeks. Bridge gathered eggs with reverence, never taking too many. Even Thomas learned to carry a basket, his small hands offering sorrel leaves with pride. Our hair grew glossy, our skin lost its gray pallor. Laughter returned like rain after drought. At night, smoke rose from our cottage roof, not as a signal of despair, but as a hymn of survival. Mr. Ryan taught us the art of willowfish traps. Mrs. Doyle shared the miracle of smoked meat. Together, we built a storehouse, a sanctuary of dried berries, smoked fish, and nuts, a fortress against the coming winter. One evening, as the fire crackled and neighbors worked side by side, Granny's eyes glistened. "It's like the old days, before the English broke us, people living with the land, not against it. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit." That night, I realized we weren't just surviving. We were remembering who we truly were. Seasons shaped us as surely as hunger once had. Spring sang with nettles and wild garlic, birds' nests hidden in hedges, streams alive with trout. Summer gave strawberries, berries, apples, the wild forest heavy with gifts. Autumn was the heartbeat of the year. Hazelnuts, mushrooms, rose hips glowing red against frost-kissed mornings. Winter was hardest, a stern teacher, but our smokehouses and stores held us, while the forest whispered secrets. Watercress in streams, cranberries in frozen bogs, the pulse of life, even in snow. I grew into the valley's rhythm, my steps soft as a deer's shadow, eyes reading trails, heart listening to the wild. Bridge became a hunter of nests, careful, reverent, always leaving enough for life to renew itself. Even Thomas, once weak with hunger, now ran barefoot through meadows, his basket filled with sorrel, his laughter like a bird's song. Yet the valley tested us. Once, Thomas swallowed berries we hadn't checked. Ma wept, holding his fevered body, whispering prayers until his eyes finally opened again. Another time, Soldiers rode near, hunting evicted families. We hid in the forest, hearts pounding, while owls hooted above as if guarding us. Winter took many fish from our stream, forcing us deeper into the forest, where deer prints led us like scripture across frozen ground. But we endured. More than endured, we blossomed. Da carved furniture from oak and ash. Ma dyed flax cloth with berries and bark, weaving color back into our world. We children spoke Irish freely, our words rolling like the stream. No landlord to silence us. More families came, drawn by whispers of survival. Some stayed, others moved on, but all carried away Granny's wisdom. The gospel of wild foods. By the firelight, she would lift her hand, voice trembling with memory. This is how our people lived, taking what nature gave, sharing with neighbors, reading the land like your own mother's face. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. Her words bound us to one another, and to the wild itself. Granny lived to see 4 winters in the valley, her hair silver as moonlight, her eyes still fierce as hawks. One December night, she slipped away in her sleep, her breath quiet, her hands folded as if in prayer. We buried her beneath an oak, stones piled in the old ways, the forest wind carrying our grief like song. At her funeral, Mr. Ryan's voice broke. She gave us back our heritage. She taught us to see food where others saw weeds. I thought of everything she had given me. How to follow birds' flight to find weather, to read moss for direction, to watch insects for signs of rain. This knowledge was no longer hers alone. It was mine, as much a part of me as my own heartbeat. By 1849, the blight lifted. Potatoes grew again. Some families left, eager to return. But Da shook his head. Never again. No man should depend on one crop. Ma's garden grew a patchwork of tame and wild. We children knew no world beyond this valley, nor did we want one. When I was 13, English naturalists stumbled upon us. They came not as masters but as students, marveling at our survival. One, Dr. Morrison, listened as I named plants, explained seaweed, bog beans, cranberries. He wrote it all, his respect shining. You've preserved something precious, he told me. Knowledge that can mean the difference between life and death. He was right. Years later, grown and teaching in Cork City, I still carried Granny's voice in my bones. My children mocked my habit of gathering nettles, of pointing out edible weeds. They laughed, secure in shops and meals. But I knew better. I had seen how quickly the world could collapse. I had seen families starve surrounded by food they didn't recognize. I had seen a valley teach us that the bond between humanity and nature is not just survival. It is salvation. The Lord will provide. And when summer evenings fall soft, I close my eyes, and I am there again. The hidden valley alive with birdsong, the stream whispering, the orchard in bloom, and Granny's laughter echoing like a promise through a story of how a boy, guided by the wisdom of an old woman and the relentless teacher that is hunger, discovered that the land itself carries memory, mercy, and miracles. We survived the famine not by waiting for rescue, nor by clinging to promises of aid that never came, but by reaching backward to the wisdom of ancestors who had known the land as kin, not commodity, knowledge once dismissed as backward and primitive, mocked as superstition, revealed itself to be more precious than every modern improvement that had failed us. We became gatherers again, hunters of sustenance and hope, and in the foraging we found our souls restored. That was our animal rescue, our human rescue. For in saving ourselves, we also saved the knowledge of humanity's oldest bond. The wild foods are still there, the nettles growing green in the ditches, their sting hiding their nourishment, the shellfish clinging silently to rocks, waiting for low tide, the berries swelling red and purple in their season, ignored by those who see only weeds and bramble. They remain like hidden prayers, waiting for someone with eyes clear enough to recognize their worth. Sometimes, when I watch children playing in city parks, laughter echoing like bird song, I want to stop them. I want to kneel and point and say, look closer. That leaf can heal you. That mushroom will kill you. That one, though, is a feast. The sea is a table laid if you know how to ask. The forest is a storehouse if you walk gently enough to be welcomed in. But I don't. They would call me mad. The old man with his strange talk of eating weeds. So I smile, holding Granny's gift like a secret flame, ready for the day someone truly hungers not just for food, but for wisdom. Ask the animals and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky and they will tell you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? Because you never know. You never know when the world might crumble again, when the markets might empty, when the fields might fail. You never know when survival will once more depend on recognizing food where others see only wilderness. The knowledge waits, patient as seeds beneath snow, resting in the memories of the old, buried in forgotten stories, sprouting wild at the edges of our tame, caged world. All it asks of us is to remember, to bend down, to taste, to see, to trust again in the wild providence of the land. That was Granny's final truth. That real knowledge, hard-won and blood-bound through generations of living close to the soil, can never truly die. It waits for the hands willing to gather, the hearts willing to trust. We survived the great hunger by becoming gatherers again, as our ancestors had been before fields, before cities, before all the fragile comforts of civilization. And in that gathering, we remembered ourselves, not as lords or beggars, not as landlords or tenants, but as children of the earth. In the end, it was not government relief that saved us, nor charity, nor ships across the sea. It was an old woman's steady voice, whispering which weeds would fill our bellies and which would end our lives. It was courage forged in hunger, and faith that the land would not abandon those who respected its gifts. That is my story. The story of the first gatherers, or perhaps the last. The story of how, in finding food in a wild world, we found something far greater. We found ourselves, and in that hidden valley, wrapped in the arms of nature, we discovered the miracle of endurance. The heartwarming animal video written by God Himself. Humanity rescued by the wilderness it had nearly forgotten. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more. The sun shall not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb in the midst of the throne will be their shepherd, and He will guide them to springs of living water. That is the ending, not sorrowful, not broken, but triumphant. A happy ending born not of riches, but of survival, of hope, of memory. Granny's voice is gone, but it lingers still in every rustle of the hedge, every shimmer of water, every berry ripening in its time. Her gift lives on, in me, in you, in all who dare to remember. And if you listen closely, you will hear it too. The wild calling, asking one question. Will you remember? It is the beating heart of a miracle that still echoes through the wild. I can still taste the warmth of wild strawberries, their sweetness carrying the memory of survival. I can still hear Granny's voice, patient and unshakable, reminding us that life endures even when hope seems lost. She taught us that hunger may break the body, but it cannot silence the wisdom carried in the roots, leaves, and waters of the earth. The great hunger claimed millions, tore families apart, silenced songs, and nearly crushed the Irish soul. Yet in one hidden valley, life persisted. We were not saved by gold, by landlords, or by ships bound across the sea. We were saved by the simplest truth, that the land, if respected, will never abandon those who listen. The Lord is good to all. He has compassion on all He has made. That valley became more than a refuge. It was a rebirth. From its streams, forests, and meadows we learned to see with new eyes, to walk not as beggars but as children of creation. Granny's knowledge, once mocked as primitive, proved more valuable than all the progress of man. In remembering the old ways, we rediscovered not just food, but ourselves. And though Granny now rests beneath the oak, her gift endures. Every nettle in a ditch, every clam on a rock, every berry ripening in silence, is her voice still speaking. It says, "Do not forget, the world may fail you, but the land will feed you if you walk with respect." Even now, when I walk through city parks and see children laughing, I long to kneel beside them and whisper, "And look, this leaf can heal you, that one can feed you. The wild is full of miracles, if only you remember." But I don't speak. Instead, I carry her wisdom like a hidden fire. ready for the day the world might need it again. Because one truth remains. Civilizations rise and fall, but the earth is eternal. Its gifts wait, patient and quiet, until we are humble enough to see them. And so, this is the happy ending. Not riches, not crowns, not lands returned, but something deeper. A family survived. A people endured. Knowledge was preserved. Hope was never lost. In the darkest famine, life still found a way. And in that miracle, in that hidden valley, we discovered the greatest truth of all. Humanity and nature were never meant to be apart. We belong to the wild, and in its arms, we are never truly forsaken. They will hunger no more and thirst no more. For the Lamb will be their shepherd, and he will guide them to springs of living water.